For the next 7 days, I'm gonna work like a MAPPA animator.
Though the wind is very cold.
This did not go as expected. If you don't already know, MAPPA is the studio behind some of the biggest anime of recent years, such as Jujutsu Kaisen, Chainsaw Man, and Attack on Titan the final season. However, the studio has faced severe backlash over its heavy workload, near impossible deadlines, and immense pressure on its animators, which has become detrimental to their personal lives and health. And for the next 7 days, I'm gonna be taking on the treacherous deadlines and long hours of work of a MAPPA animator. This was the most I've ever pushed myself, and it gave me a completely new view of the anime industry. After forcing myself out of bed, I made myself a quick breakfast, and since I got like no sleep last night, I almost overdosed on caffeine in the early morning. And the second the clock hit 9 a.m., the workday had begun. For the next 7 days, I have not one, but 2 animation sequences to complete. And since Studio MAPPA is known to deliver high-quality, detailed animation, I knew that this was going to be nearly impossible to pull off. So to try to set myself up for success, I split my week into 2 parts. The first 3 days were going to be used to animate a Jujutsu Kaisen sequence that features 4 cuts, and the last 4 days were going to be used to animate a Chainsaw Man sequence of 5 cuts. I already had all the storyboards and character sheets ready to go, so I was able to start animating right away. In order to be on track, my priority today was to get at least 1 to 2 cuts done, and considering how time-consuming animating semi-realistic characters is, I would have to work at least 10 to 12 hours a day this week, including the weekend, to get these cuts done in time. That's about double the hours of a regular 9-to-5 job. God, please give me strength. This is what the first animation sequence is gonna be. Sukuna is standing in the middle of Shibuya alone as dust and smoke rush toward him. With zero effort, he makes it all disappear. He then starts laughing uncontrollably, with his voice echoing throughout the empty streets. Then, out of nowhere, he claps his hands and a bunch of buildings explode. Before diving into the animation, quick message from this video's sponsor, War Thunder. If you're into epic battles, cutting-edge military tech, and commanding the most powerful vehicles ever made, why are you not playing War Thunder yet? Come on, man, lock in! It's a free-to-play military action game where you can fight on land, in the air, and at sea with a massive range of tanks, planes, helicopters, and ships. And the attention to detail is insane. The action in the game is intense and relentless. Tanks break through enemy lines, jets dominate the skies in fierce battles, and warships unleash devastating firepower in epic naval battles. Each vehicle brings unique gameplay mechanics and customization options, making every encounter thrilling and impactful. From disabling a tank's tracks to setting an aircraft on fire, every hit changes the tide of the battle, making you feel immersed in the action. And with the recent Firebirds update, you can pilot legendary vehicles like the F-117 Stealth Fighter and the F-15, and also experience enhanced graphics with ray tracing for ultra-realistic battles, which look unbelievably gorgeous. You can download War Thunder for free on PC, PlayStation, or Xbox using the link in the description. New players or those coming back after 6 months get exclusive bonuses like 100,000 Silver Lions, the Eagle of Valor Decorator, and even more gifts. And don't you forget War Thunder Mobile. You can play it for free on iOS and Android. So please do me a favor and go download War Thunder right now. I started animating Cut 1 by setting up a 3D model in Clip Studio Paint, which is the software I'm going to be using to animate. I'm going to leave a link in the description if you guys want to try it out as well. This was going to help me get the angle just right to match the storyboard and will ultimately save me a ton of time and brain power, which under these conditions, any help will really go a long way. Once I had the pose locked in, I sketched out Sukuna. Since it was going to be a bit windy in the scene, I animated the movement of his hair and clothing waving, making sure they flowed naturally to give the scene some life. After that, I focused on animating the dust and smoke rushing toward him, only to have it completely be blown away as he flexes his impeccable aura. To really sell the impact, I threw in an impact frame which was really simple and nothing much to be proud of, to be honest, but I guess it gets the job done. Then it was time to do the cleanup and the in-betweens, which took a long time. It is now my lunch break. I got myself some chicken and rice and a protein shake, but I'm doing pretty good so far, and I just hope I'm able to pull this off again. This is delicious, I'm not gonna lie to you. After my awesome lunch break, I got right back to it for a couple of hours until cut number 1 was completely finished. It is 6 p.m. and reality is starting to set in. This is gonna be very, very difficult to pull off in time, so I legit have no time to waste at all. I need to start working on the second cut right now. And even though I didn't get that much sleep, I have a lot of reserved energy, I feel like, so this is a great time to get a lot done. I started animating cut 2 by sketching out Sukuna's face. This shot was a little bit difficult because the camera pans slightly as he transitions from smiling to bursting out laughing, and I struggled to get the proportions and the angles right. To make things easier, I pulled up some of the character sheet pictures of Sukuna's face and used them as a reference for some of the frames. I used the liquify tool to stretch out his mouth to make him laugh. It looks super goofy right now, but I knew it would look way better once the line art was done. Speaking of line art, I knew there was no way I was finishing this cut today because that and the in-betweens are by far the most time-consuming part of the process, so I'd have to tackle most of it tomorrow. For now, I focused on cleaning up the roughs and getting started on the in-betweens. To keep everything consistent, I also added shading references across the frames, which took a bit of extra time, but it was worth it to make sure everything looked solid in the final product. And just like that, the clock hit 9 p.m., meaning I had finished my first 12-hour day. Guys, it is officially 9 p.m. That means I have finished my first day. Let's go! Yeah, I think I got a lot of work done so far, and I'm very confident that I'm going to be able to finish it in time. But you know, it's animation, so you never really know. With day number 1 being finished, I took a nice little shower and got ready to go to bed, because as time goes on, this was only gonna get more difficult. Day 2 started with a quick trip to McDonald's for breakfast because I just didn't feel like cooking. While eating, I thought about how things went yesterday. I got a decent amount done, but there's still a lot left to do, especially with all the line art and in-betweens that cut 2 still needs. I also didn't get the best sleep, so I'm still feeling a little bit tired, but I'm hoping once I get into the flow state, I can power through and get a lot done. With that being said, the clock hit 9 a.m. yet again, so it's time to get back to work. I jumped straight back into animating cut 2. My journey to get the cleanest line art possible was still going strong, so I knew this was gonna take a lot of time. Getting the in-betweens right to make everything look smoother took a ton of effort, but it was worth it to make the animation flow properly. I also copied Sukuna's hands and eased them to further emphasize his evil, maniacal laugh. As I was wrapping up this cut and I was looking back at what I made, I noticed that something felt a bit off. The way Sukuna's turn eased in at the start wasn't looking quite right. It felt a little bit stiff, so I went back and added a couple more in-between frames to fix it. And just like that, after a ton of tweaking and polishing, cut 2 was finally finished. It is 2:23 p.m. so I still have how many hours? Like 6 hours and a half left of today. Oh my gosh. Today has felt extremely slow. I'm not gonna lie. The time has been slowly passing by. Done like 15, 16 hours of work so far. I feel sore from sitting down. Does that make any sense? Is that like normal? I've been sitting down for so long, I'm starting to feel sore from sitting. Without wasting any time, I got started on cut 3, which features Sukuna still laughing with the camera panning out and then he claps. I yet again positioned the 3D model in Clip Studio to help me get the most extreme positions nailed down. Once I had those set, I sketched out a rough version of the 2 keyframes. After that, I started filling in the in-betweens, which turned out to be way more mentally exhausting than I had anticipated. It took a while, but once I had the rough sketch sort of figured out, I jumped straight into the line art. For this cut, I wanted to focus on having super detailed line work, similar to some of the high quality cuts we see in Jujutsu Kaisen Season 2. Because of that, I decided to skip shading entirely for this one to keep things more manageable. I also made Sukuna's expressions as exaggerated as possible by intentionally going off model to really sell his manic, unhinged energy. At around 6 p.m., I took a quick snack break to get my mind off the animation for at least a little bit, but it dwelled in my mind that I still had a ton of work left to do.
Don't ask me why again, we tried again and didn't feel the same. The plans was sniffing up the diagram. Winter overseas, I got some bags that need acquiring. We used to get cash, the checks bigger, so they wired them.
9 p.m. was creeping up yet again, and although I hadn't finished this cut, I had made a good amount of progress that is to be proud of. I got a pretty good amount done today. I'm pretty happy with how everything is turning out. Obviously, I still have a lot to do, but you know, I think I might have to do a little bit of overtime tomorrow, you know, if I want to make it as good as it can be. I'm a little bit nervous for tomorrow, but you know, we're gonna see it through, hopefully. Day 3 started with me actually cooking breakfast, but since I overslept, I didn't have time to sit and eat properly with the 9 a.m. shift about to begin. So I brought the food with me to my setup and I ate while I got back to drawing. Cut 4 was up next, and it featured Sukuna exploding some tall buildings in Shibuya. I started by making the canvas extra tall since this was going to be a pan-up shot, which needed a lot of vertical space. I didn't want to spend too much time stressing over the background, so I imported a picture of Shibuya and traced over it. Call it cheating, I don't care. To get the scale right, I positioned the 3D model yet again, which has come in clutch this entire project time and time again. With the background sorted, I sketched out the animation for the explosions. Explosions grow fast and then they ease out slow, and so I did just that to make the movement feel more natural. After the sketch was done, I started cleaning up and making the in-betweens. And I gotta say, the number of lines I had to draw for this cut was just insane. I am so unbelievably bored of animating. I'm just like so tired. I'm actually like really scared because I have another 4 days to go after today. But man, I really do not want to keep doing this, man. I'm actually just like, I'm forcing myself to just keep on drawing, but every single bone in my body is telling me to stop, to go lay down on my bed and fall asleep. That's literally all my brain is telling me. At around 7:50 p.m., the endless in-betweens for the explosions had completely drained my soul. In other words, I got tired of drawing the in-betweens for the explosions, so I switched to drawing Sukuna for a bit, which was only a still frame. After that, I got back to working on finishing the remaining in-between frames for the explosions. I kept going, and as the hours crawled by, the clock was ticking closer to 9 p.m. At some point, my hand felt like it was on autopilot, but thankfully, the day came to an end. I finally finished project number 1. I have no idea how I'm gonna survive the next 4 days. I'm very exhausted. I'm just glad I'm done with this, at least. But now I gotta move on to a potentially even harder animation. Day 4 started and I could feel the burnout hitting me pretty hard. And it's not just the workload, it's the anticipation of everything I still have left to do that's the real killer here. Even as I sat down to eat breakfast, the thought of how much work was still ahead sat heavy in the back of my mind. I knew I had to keep going, but it was getting harder to stay focused with every single cut. And today was no different. Now that the first sequence is officially over, it's time to move on to the Chainsaw Man animation. The animation begins with Denji in Makima's office, caught in a spicy situation. As she leans in, he shyly leans back in his chair, flustered. Makima places a hand on his face, her thumb playing with his hair while he sits there, stunned. The next shot is the close-up shot of her face. She blinks, and then her hands move all over Denji, reaching for his cord. Without hesitation, she pulls it. In the final shot, Denji's head brutally explodes as he transforms into Chainsaw Man. The clock has hit 9 a.m., so you know what that means. It's time to lock in. I started animating cut 1 by drawing the chair Denji is sitting on, making sure to get the shape and the proportions right since it's a key part of the scene. Once that was done, I placed yet another 3D model and drew Denji's body into position, referencing his character sheet to make sure his skinny frame matched the design perfectly. After that, I repeated the process for Makima. Getting Makima into the right pose turned out to be way more difficult than I expected. It took a lot longer than it should have, and at this point, I could really feel myself burning out. And this is to the point where I could barely even draw the simplest of drawings. Once both characters were posed, I started animating Denji, leaning back into the chair. To keep things consistent, I copied and pasted Denji's head into each frame instead of redrawing it every single time. I did the same thing for Makima as she leaned in, which saved me some time and helped keep the proportions more accurate. I also adjusted the timing of their movements to make the scene make more sense. Next, I moved on to Denji's line art, focusing on making it consistent with his character sheet. Once I had the keyframes cleaned up, I moved on to the in-betweens, which at this rate is increasingly making me want to rip my head off. Also, if you made it this far and didn't skip to the end to watch the final result, comment something random like hairy eagle to confuse all the fake frauds that did skip to the end. Also, please like and subscribe. It would really mean the world to me if we can make it to 100,000 subscribers soon. Thanks a lot. The support has been awesome. It is day 4, 3:40 p.m. and I am so tired. I don't know if you could tell by my eyes. I'm about to go make a quick run to Target and buy myself some energy drinks because I think I'm gonna fall asleep mid-animating and we really don't want that. So I got in my car, safely drove to Target and grabbed a couple of Celsius drinks. Can we just talk about how this was almost $16 for 4 drinks and an egg white thing? Like, this is getting ridiculous. At what point is it enough? Cheers. After finishing up the line art for Denji, I moved on to Makima. Her details took a bit longer than expected, but I eventually wrapped it up. After what felt like way more time than I probably should have spent, the first cut was finally finished. I'm not exactly too proud of how this came out, but I really don't have the time to sit in a corner and be disappointed at myself today. So without wasting any time, I jumped straight into working on the next cut. Cut 2 was next, and it featured a close-up of Denji's face looking a bit surprised as Makima's hand comes in to play with his hair. This cut involves animating a hand second, which, as you guys know, is something I fear drawing with every fiber of my being, I more or less follow the same techniques as before, starting with a clean line art based on the sketch of the storyboard. I left parts of Denji's hair open to make room for Makima's hand interacting with it, and since I wanted the animation to feel as natural as possible, I made sure that as Makima's thumb moved across his hair shifted accordingly with her movements. To make Denji's reaction more realistic, I also added a little bit of animation to his cheek, making it move slightly. It took a lot of trial and error to get everything feeling smooth, but by the end, it was starting to come together. And right as the clock hit 9 p.m., I finished the second cut, and also, day 4 is officially done. It is officially the end of day 4, and I have completed the first 2 cuts. Tomorrow I'm going to try to do 2, 3, and that's pretty much it. And then I'm going to spend the last 2 days working on this one because I want to make sure that it's like insane. So I don't even know if I'm going to be able to get my ideas out in time, which is an issue that happens in the anime community. Animators don't have enough time to get their ideas out fully and end up turning in unfinished work, which ends up looking unfinished in the anime. And it's because of this, because there's not enough time. Day 5 started with cut 3, which is a close-up of Makima blinking. As I began to draw, I didn't know what was wrong with me, but I really just couldn't draw for shit today. I was messing up pretty badly on the simplest cut so far. So in order to get some assistance, I set up a quick 3D model for reference, and then I sketched out Makima's eyes and her face. I then proceeded to move on to the line art, and to avoid any interference with the animation, I made sure to draw everything on separate layers, the hair on the highest layer, the face and shoulders on the bottom layer, and the eyes, which is going to be the only thing moving in the middle. The animation itself was pretty straightforward, but getting Makima's face to look just right took a lot longer than I thought it would. Next was cut 4, where Makima moves her hand down Denji's body and pulls his cord to transform him. I started yet again with a 3D model as a foundation, then I sketched things out and adjusted the size and positioning until it felt just right. Makima's hand would start on Denji's cheek, move down to his chest, and pull the cord. But making that motion look natural was way harder than it looks. The drawing of the hands where she's pulling his cord was very difficult for me to figure out, so I ended up taking a picture of my own hand as a reference to help me out a little bit. I spent a ridiculous amount of time tweaking the movements to make it look right, especially when it came to the in-betweens. Keeping the finger's length to remain consistent and also keep the animation looking smooth was also very difficult. This took a ton of time to pull off, and I felt myself getting more and more exhausted by the second. At this point, I was starting to miss my normal routine, but this is what MAPPA animators go through, and then 10 times more. As the clock closed in on 9 p.m., I finally finished cut 4 and wrapped up yet another exhausting day. I just woke up. It's day 6, which means I have just today and tomorrow left, and then I'm done with all of this. And that's the good part, but the bad part is now I have to animate the most hard cut out of all these, the most complicated one. The biggest tragedy of all this is how I've been able to get like not that much sleep these last couple days. I'm at a point right now where I'm having dreams of animating. I spent all day animating, and now I'm animating in my dreams. I can't catch a break. Cut 5 is the final cut of the week, and it was gonna be by far the most challenging and the one with the most drawings. It features a camera pan out of Denji's face, followed by his head exploding and transforming him into Chainsaw Man. Right at 9 a.m., I started by sketching out the final frame of the first half of the animation to give me a clear idea of where the camera movement is gonna end. Once I had that figured out, I drew the first frame to map everything out properly and began working on the details of Denji's face and body. After that, I started sketching the breakdown frames to create a smooth, easing flow. Things were moving along decently until I got to the part where Denji's head turns into Chainsaw Man. This was where I hit a wall. Chainsaw Man's design is incredibly detailed, and trying to give it motion felt borderline impossible. Even a single frame would take forever to draw, let alone animating the whole transformation. As I sat there, frustrated and stressed, I realized that I needed to think outside the box. Animators are always looking for ways to save time, so I found the 3D model of Chainsaw Man, big shout out to the creator, and I imported it into Blender. I animated the movement I wanted there, then when that was done, I exported it at 12 FPS and brought it back to Clip Studio to trace over, leaving me with something that's okay. It's not exactly what I envisioned when I started, but it gets the job done, and honestly, it doesn't look that bad. What came next was hands down the most painful part of these 7 days, cleaning up and doing the in-betweens for this cut. I had to get through 32 frames, and with around 16 hours of work ahead of me, it felt like it was never gonna end. I was struggling with every single frame, and as the hours dragged on, I could feel myself becoming more and more empty with this process. I tried to make everything as consistent as I could with the time I had, but honestly, I just felt lifeless. I didn't want to do this anymore, but I had to. My hand felt like it had a brain of its own, and my desire to keep going was at an all-time low. I kept telling myself there's only one more day, but honestly, it didn't help much. By the time the clock finally hit 9 p.m., I was completely drained, but more than anything, I was just relieved that day 6 was finally over. Before the day started, I decided to step outside for a bit to truly take in the moment, to clear my head and to remind myself that today is the final day. One final hard push and then I'm finally free from this. When I sat back down, it was time to lock in and finish this animation. Everything, every frame, every detail had to be done by the end of today. Today was about getting it done as best as I can with the little time I had left. As I worked, I could feel the weight of the last 7 days on me. My hand was sore, my back was hurting like a bitch, and my mind was racing, trying to keep track of every little movement in the animation, but also thinking about how much of a privileged position I'm in. This entire week has reminded me to be grateful for the life I have and to become more mindful of the opportunities and privileges I often take for granted. It's made me realize that even in challenging times, there's always something to be thankful for.
Yeah, you got a dream. Just put one foot in front of the other.
This was, without a doubt, the hardest challenge I've done so far on this channel. It pushed me physically, mentally, and emotionally in ways I didn't even think were possible. After just 7 days of this, I can't even begin to imagine what it's like for animators who have to live this reality every single day. The amount of effort, the blood, sweat, and tears that goes into something that will inevitably be scrutinized by people that aren't willing to lift up a pebble, let alone put in the work to create something meaningful, is insane. I hope that after seeing a fraction of the work that goes into making an animation, anime fans can try to be more understanding and appreciate the animators who put in the hard work every single day to give us our entertainment.